Today we're going to be checking out a really interesting watch. This is a military style field watch with Tridium. It has an in-house hand-wound movement, and you can pick it up for around $175. So yes, we're going to be looking at an homage watch from China. But like I said, this is one that I found to be particularly interesting, and I think you will too. This is a watch that comes from one of my favorite Chinese micro brands in Merkur, and it's an homage of a somewhat obscure military watch made by Marathon, which if you're into military watches, I'm sure you've heard of them. They manufacture a lot of watches for the US military. But while it's really common to see Chinese brands copy more expensive, more established brands, what's less common is to see them take that original watch and then make a lot of improvements and even refinements to the design that in a lot of ways I think makes it even more appealing than the original. Now, there's obviously going to be some huge trade-offs when you go from a watch that is purpose-built in Switzerland for the United States military to a watch that costs less than half of that that's manufactured in China. You're obviously going to lose a lot of the ruggedness and reliability that comes with a true military watch, but instead you're getting a much lower cost, a better design, and a watch that's still surprisingly well built. Now, this watch that we're looking at today was sent in by Merkur for review for free, which is why you saw the paid promotions flag at the beginning of this video. However, other than the watch itself, Merkur did not provide any payment for this review, nor did they have any input into the content of this review. So let's check it out. So this watch is an homage, but it's an homage to a kind of obscure watch that probably not many people have heard of. So it's helpful to get a little bit of context to look at the original that this thing is copying. This is an homage to a military field watch built by Marathon in the officer's hand-wound mechanical watch. Marathon builds watches for militaries around the world. They build a lot of watches for the US military, and they build these to military specifications. That means their watches are designed for practicality and to be able to stand up in combat. And watches built to this standard tend to be somewhat expensive. The original from Marathon runs for around $565. But if you're looking to make kind of a civilian version of this watch that retains the overall look and a lot of the same functionality by also including Tridium tubes on the dial, there's a lot of areas where you could improve the design a bit. And I think that's what Merkur has really done here with this watch. Merkur has very clearly copied the overall design of this watch from Marathon. But when you look at the details, they've tweaked a lot of things from the overall size and proportions to the accents and the strap choices that are included. And pretty much every single one of those changes is a change for the better, in my opinion. I have no doubt that the Swiss-made watch from Marathon is going to be a much more durable, longer-lasting, purpose-built field watch than this watch from Merkur. But in my opinion, this watch from Merkur looks much better than the watch from Marathon. It's going to be much easier to change out straps. It's better proportioned, and at around $175, it's a lot less expensive. So with all that out of the way, let's start to dive into the design of this watch, and as we go, I'll kind of compare it a little bit to the Marathon original. Starting with the case here, which is very similar between the two watches. This is a very unique looking case. It is fully bead blasted, so it has a matte gray finish to it, but the design is very unique. It's a blocky case that's primarily fashioned out of a single piece of stainless steel without a bezel attached to it. You have squared off lugs and some integrated crown guards. But the really interesting design element to the case is the top, where there's this concave rim that rises from the case up to the sapphire glass. It's a very striking and unique look that I haven't seen done on any other watches before, and I think maybe the idea here is that it's going to make that watch much less susceptible to getting caught on sleeves or other things in the environment. There's just this smooth, gentle flow to the curve at the top of the case, so there's no sharp edges or anything to get caught on anything, which makes sense for a military watch. And while both the Marathon and the Merkur maintain this striking case design, Merkur has gone with some pretty different proportions to the case that I like a lot better. It's slightly enlarged at 37 millimeters compared to the Marathon's 36, but the thing that I really like is that this features 20 millimeter lugs instead of the Marathon's very awkward 16 millimeter lugs. This means that you're going to have a lot more strap options for this watch from Merkur. And in fact, Merkur does give you two strap options on this watch. So one option is a very unique, very interesting metal bracelet that we're going to spend some time talking about. But mine was also packaged with a Perlon NATO style strap. And I've never seen a NATO style strap made out of Perlon material, so this was another very interesting strap. I'm not sure if that green Perlon strap is like a free include if you get the metal bracelet, because on their website they have listed a green strap option, but it's not the green strap that I have here. So if you get the metal bracelet, maybe you'll get this cool green Perlon strap as well as a bonus. I'm not exactly sure here. But all that to say, this is going to give you a lot more strap options here than the original from Marathon. And this also has a very interesting lug design as well. Rather than use traditional spring bars, this watch features screw bars that can be kind of permanently attached to the watch. And this, I think, is a great choice for a military style watch like this. These are much thicker, much more sturdy, much less prone to breaking or snapping off than a spring bar would be. And that's why a lot of military watches in the past have offered fixed spring bars that are permanently attached and can only be used with single pass straps. Merkur is kind of giving you the best of both worlds here by giving you the option to unscrew these bars and to be able to then use some two-piece straps with this system. The caveat is that it's not going to be compatible with all straps because those bars are fairly thick. So you're going to need a strap that has kind of larger holes for spring bars. But I found quite a few leather straps that I was able to comfortably put onto this watch, which is a really cool bonus because this watch does look good on a lot of different straps. Now you are going to lose some convenience. It is quite a process to change straps on this watch unless you're just going to stick with single pass straps or NATO style straps. To unscrew those screw bars, you do need 2 screwdrivers and a little bit of dexterity to get everything disassembled. So I wouldn't intend to be changing straps on this watch very frequently. Again, unless you want to go with NATO style straps, which is probably the smartest thing to do here, because then you can just leave those bars screwed in and then you can slide on any NATO or single pass strap that you want. Well, almost any one that you want. Actually, the Perlon style NATO strap is too thick to fit between those spring bars, so you do have to unscrew them in order to install that strap. Another really cool feature of this watch is the Tridium on the hands and the dial. This is one of the main features that Marathon offers in their watches. It's a great feature for a military watch because Tridium is probably the best low light option for a field watch. There's a bit of a debate between Tridium and Lume. The difference between the two is that Tridium watches feature little tubes on the dial that have Tridium radioactive material inside these glass tubes, and then the inside of the tubes are painted with phosphorescent paint. The radioactive material inside the tubes excites the phosphorescent paint, which causes it to glow dimly all the time without needing any light to charge it for like 15 years straight. Standard Lume formulations, on the other hand, are charged by sunlight. They are non-radioactive and they will glow very brightly after exposure to light for a brief period of time, and then they will begin to dim rapidly over the course of the next few hours. Now, you don't need to worry about the radioactive material in Tridium. It is perfectly safe. The radiation is so weak that it doesn't even escape those little glass vials. Now, I do a lot of Lume testing on this channel with the watches that are sent in. So let's put this through my J-score test and see if this helps you understand how the Tridium is actually going to function in real life. So we're going to put the Tridium in this pretty inexpensive Chinese-built watch up against the best Lume there is. I'm going to be putting it up against the Wise Adamascus 88 dive watch. And what you'll notice right away is that initially the Lume is much brighter than the Tridium, but it only takes 26 minutes for the brightness of that Lume to decrease to the point where it's equal to the Tridium. And then from then on out, the Tridium is going to continue shining at the same brightness, easily beating out any Lume formulation on the market. After 1 hour, the Lume on the Wise Adamascus 88 scores a 22, but the Merkur is more than twice as bright with a score of 50. And again, every second that the lumed watch remains in the dark, it's just going to continue to get dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, while the Tridium is going to maintain that exact same level of brightness over the course of months and years to come. Now, Tridium doesn't last forever. The radioactive material in there is slowly decaying, and that's why after about 10 to 12 years, the brightness typically is going to be to a point where it is not really that legible anymore. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, because after the Tridium eventually runs down, you're going to really lose a lot of the functionality that this watch offers. Now, the other thing that you really need to keep in mind here is the movement inside of this watch, because this uses a Chinese Chinese-based movement from Merkur. They kind of build this movement as an in-house movement. I assume that means that they're taking some other Chinese movement and doing modifications or adjustments to it. It says on the case back that they have adjusted it in 3 positions. But because I don't know what this movement is based off of, and because there's not really a lot of information published on it, I don't know a lot about it. But here's what I can tell you about it. This is a hand-wound only movement, so you need to wind it every day. It does not feature hacking, which to me is kind of a mismatch with a military watch like this, because hacking is what allows you to synchronize the watch to a reference time precisely, which is obviously very important in military operations. So I think that's a particularly glaring downside in this watch, but the movement does seem to be running pretty accurately. I had it going on my wrist and sitting on my desk for a period of about 4 days, during which time it ran at about an average of plus 13 seconds a day, which is a level of accuracy that is fairly comparable to what you'll see from Japanese movements from Seiko or Miyota in their entry-level line. That is to say, the most common movements you're going to see on any microbrand watches out there. I'm not sure what the stated power reserve on this movement is, but I did have it running for about 40 hours without winding it, which would be pretty much in line again with those other entry-level Japanese movements. So all that to say, other than the lack of hacking, I haven't had any problems with this movement, and it seems to be running pretty well. The major question here is going to be reliability on the long term, because I have no idea what the track record of this movement is, and whether or not you're going to be able to get this movement serviced if you need to down the road. Because of the unknowns in this movement, you may not be able to find a local watchmaker willing to work on it, which would necessitate you sending it back to Merkur if you really wanted to get it fixed. But that might not be the easiest thing in the world either, given that Merkur is based in China, and I don't personally have a lot of confidence in their after-sales support department. I've done a number of reviews of Merkur watches, and I have been consistently impressed with their designs and with the quality of their watchmaking. However, unfortunately, at the same time, I have heard a number of complaints from people who have bought watches from Merkur that have had a very difficult time getting customer service from them. But that's kind of to be expected when you're purchasing a watch direct from China in this price range. This is a Tridium watch with a sapphire crystal, an automatic movement, and a very unique look and design, and you're getting all that for around $170. And so I think rolling the dice a bit when it comes to after-sales support is kind of a trade-off that's wrapped up into the whole proposition here. All right, all of this is getting kind of long, but we still have to talk about the bracelet because that's another really interesting thing about this watch. I did a bit of research. It seems to be based on the bong clip bracelet from Seiko. Now, that is a trademark name, so they're not calling this a bong clip bracelet because only Seiko can do that. But design-wise, this appears to be exactly the same thing. The bracelet here is essentially a chain that is extremely flexible and therefore very comfortable on the wrist. The links are very narrow, which also allows for a high degree of adjustability, allowing you to get a very precise fit on the wrist. And because the chain link design allows this bracelet to be so flexible, it actually functions more like a Velcro style strap. So one end of the chain gets passed through a loop at the end of the watch and then pulled back and then affixed to itself. There's a little clasp with some teeth in it that can kind of grab onto any of the links on that chain. And once on the wrist, it's incredibly comfortable. Now, if you look closely, it appears to be kind of cheaply made with a folded link design, but that doesn't affect the comfort at all. And from a distance, just because it's such a unique bracelet style, it doesn't look cheap at all. It just looks very different and novel. And I'm really glad that they offer this as an option because I would have never experienced a bracelet like this otherwise, and it is a really fun one to try out and an interesting one to have. But I don't think the finish of the bracelet matches the finish of the watch. And well, I'm glad they packaged it with that bracelet. That wasn't what I actually wound up wearing it with mostly. I thought I was just going to go straight over to NATO straps with this, but I actually tried it out on an elastic strap from Luff that they had sent over from testing, and I absolutely loved it on that strap. To me, that charcoal gray color perfectly matches the watch, and the elastic just makes it insanely comfortable. One last comment before I close this down. I really like the refinement to the dial design as well. The white syringe hands contrast great against that black dial, and they just have a little bit more elegant look than the original from Marathon. And I also really like how Merkur has added a rehaut or chapter ring to the edge of the dial, which the Tridium tubes kind of are set into. It's a subtle but very cool look. The one complaint I would have about the dial design is that the second hand does not feature a tritium tube. It's just a loomed second hand. Usually tritium watches also feature a tube on the second hand, so it would have been nice to see that here. Instead, you're just getting standard loom on the second hand. So that second hand, along with the printed Arabics, even though those are all loom, they're going to wear down pretty quickly while the tritium will just continue going forever. Okay, this has gone on a bit longer than I planned, but there were a lot of interesting things about this watch that I wanted to bring up. Hopefully this helps you make a decision about whether or not this is something you would be interested in getting. You know, as we've been over, there are a lot of pros and cons here, but overall this is a very interesting design, very functional with that tritium loom, and definitely one of the cooler homages that I've seen. As always, I would love to hear what you guys think of this watch. Drop me a comment down below and let me know. And if you're interested in getting a watch-themed t-shirt or hoodie like this one here, you can check out my website at justthewatch.com. That's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.